Do you find that sometimes with social media?
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Welcome back to the Larry Yatesasis Show. I am back. I am enjoying myself in this beautiful weather in California. Now, I'm not fighting off tornadoes and electrical storms, and we had a little bit of shower here. So I actually have some friends of mine on the East Coast. You guys finally, I can't call and tease you about your bad weather no more. So I got to find something else to tease my East Coast people about. But anyway, thank you again, and I'm a little bit slow on pulling the trigger today. I've got a little bit of sadness in my heart. As you know, we've been watching to see what has been going on in South Carolina. And so I really now, because of the guest that we have today, is a wonderful, wonderful human being here that I think you're going to love. And I think now I'm going to just challenge myself in pronouncing his name. So those of you that know me know that I will butcher a name. But I think we have Mr. Karimu. Yes. We have Mr. Karimu in the house. And Mr. Karimu, thank you for joining us. Give us a little hand clap there for Mr. Karimu. And the reason I'm bringing Mr. Karimu in early on the show because we've learned how quick this hour goes. And this is a brother that is a very spiritual minded brother, very intelligent brother that has history and stuff to talk to us about. And guess what? Jarvis, the engineer guy, going to join us today. And so we're going to have a little fun and talk a little bit about the little seriousness that's going on. And in fact, one of the things, when I was coming in, Mr. Karimu, and I was looking on CNN, so they released in South Carolina with the shooting, they released the video cam from the cop's car. So I really can't talk about that because I didn't see that. And Jarvis, did you see that?
No, I didn't see it.
You didn't see that yet? And so I know they're going to find some ways to twist the story a little bit here. Yeah. But, when you we want to talk about your book. I just can't wait to get into your book. But leading this off for a little bit, and I owe it to my listeners to at least talk about this shooting and what did you feel when you first saw this video?
I usually don't look at TV or radio, and so I just saw it yesterday for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for the first time. So I thought it was horrific. It's a terrible tragedy. And for him to get shot in the back.
5 times. Yeah, they actually shot at him 8 times and shot him 5 times.
And then with the taser, and him dropping the taser and planting it near the body, that was just awful thing. And you know what? I think the thing that really strikes me, not the most, but to see how calm the officer was after he did the shooting. Oh, yeah. And I didn't hear a lot of people comment. You felt the same thing, John?
I felt the same way.
It was like business as usual.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, okay, no big deal, kill a nigga. Mm-hmm. And I go, let's find this. I left my taser. Let me go get the taser here. And I'm sorry, people, for using the N word, but sometimes something this serious, I don't want to water it down. I'm not going to use the N word because that's not what they use out there. Yeah. And I'm really kind of, as an African American male or black, whatever you want to call me, Negro, I have to admit I'm upset. I'm upset because we can't afford it to be open season.
Exactly.
And these cops, these white cops, are getting to the point that they're treating it like it's open season. So if we don't sit back and call it what it is, and step up to the plate and make this and try to make some changes out here.
Right. Because this whole thing is just Black lives don't matter. That's why they have that slogan. And that's what's happening.
What's so fascinating about this now, and Mr. Karimu was telling me about he marched with Dr. Martin Luther King and the Selma March.
Yes.
And, with what you saw in that video, and you marching with you made history. We have history sitting here with us, people. What did you feel with coming from that back in the '60s, and then now in 2015, seeing it when you was out there on the field marching and got to see some of the hatred from being with boots on the ground, and at some point I know you said, well, it's going to get better, it's getting better, and in a lot of ways it has. But tell me about the feelings between coming from Selma to 2015.
Okay, first of all, back then participating in the Selma March, I was 21 years old. And I had no idea, that it would make such an impact on history. And looking back, it was like very dangerous when I look back on it. But at the time, I'm from Chicago, and I was 21. Just didn't have any fear. And I experienced a lot of racist things back then with, folks spitting in my face and giving me the finger and all those kinds of things, as well as the brutality back there from the police. And fast forwarding up to today, we have the same things happening, the same racist attitudes that existed back then. It's just that people aren't as overt with it presently, but you have the police just doing the same type of things.
Yeah, the police brutality, and I think, and I tell a few of my friends, some of my white friends, and I, for a long time, I really thought that many of them knew, and just didn't. I mean, a lot of them do, but I didn't think that there was white people that really didn't know, and I thought maybe they were pretending not to know. And then as I have moved from my country, Mississippi, and starting to grow and to work with more and more whites, they really don't know the brutality that goes on with the police department and African Americans or black people in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And many of them really didn't know. And so I think what we're seeing now we're seeing them react to the images on TV. We're reacting because it's a history of culture with us. So we're not just reacting because of it's on camera. We're reacting like, oh, finally? You about to say something, Jarvis?
No, I was just saying that you're exactly right. I mean, we've seen it so much in our communities, is that we're reacting in the sense of, well, finally, they can see it and they'll believe it.
Yeah.
Because I think that what happens is they tend to give the police the benefit of the doubt. It's hard for them to understand that when it's not happening in their communities.
And it's the same way with back in Selma. It had been happening for months and months, these marches and everything. But when they were crossing the George Pettus Bridge, and then we had Bloody Sunday, then the TV cameras and media picked it up, and it was shown worldwide, and so they brought that attention to it. So it's the same type of things that's happening now. It's on the media and in folks' living room now, where they can actually see what's happening.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out a way to explain some of what I feel is happening within the white community now, because with the Eric Gardner and the Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, and so many of white America could still say, they still had an open door, a way out, because it could be explained.
Right.
They could come in and explain why these young people was killed, and whether it was right or wrong, they had a way to explain the cops out of it. This is going to be hard for them to explain away a man running away and being shot this many times in the back. But I think one of the things that is happening is most African Americans know someone in their family that has been abused by the police department.
Right.
If not all of us have felt that gun upside our head. But I think what is happening is now most white Americans got to look inside their family and ask themselves, if my husband had a gun and badge, is this what he would do? If my daughter had a gun and badge, is this what he or she would do? So white America now looking in their own families and saying, wait a minute, if you had a gun and badge, you would do the same thing. Right. So they're finding out that it sits at the dinner table with them, and they didn't know it, and they were able to look the other way.
And I never had experienced racism from the police until I moved to Los Angeles, because in Chicago, all the communities are segregated. You got the Irish Americans, Jewish Americans, and so you had the black Americans. So we had great role models, and so our policemen were black. And if you get stopped for a traffic ticket, they take you to the police station, offer you some coffee, cookies, while you wait until to get bailed out or whatever. But here, I got stopped for a jaywalking ticket.
Wow.
I was coming from the state, and they put me in jail for 3 days for a jaywalking.
3 days.
And shackled me to someone who had murdered somebody, And at the time, I was teaching school. I had to call my principal and tell him, hey, I'm in jail, And it was just for a traffic warning. But the one thing it taught me, pay my traffic tickets.
Well, you made a good point. I remember in my country, Mississippi, we had to be conscious of the Klansmen. We had to be conscious not to be caught off by ourselves off in the woods somewhere. But my generation was not abused by the police department.
Yes.
Because the community would not stand for the police department doing that at the time. Exactly. And sadly to say, in a good way and a bad way, the old man, the boss man, Mr. Tyfer, wouldn't allow the police to beat up on his helpers. And they had to answer to a power source. Right. And I remember my father, the cops wanted me to come to the police department and be questioned by somebody throwing a rock or something, whatever. And he pulls up in the front door. My father walked outside and said, well, what time do you want me to have my son down there for questioning? And the officer said, well, I could take him down. My father said, no, I don't want him riding in the back seat of that car. And then when my father gave his word that he would have me there at 11 o'clock that morning, guess what? My father had my butt sitting there at 11 o'clock that morning. So you had a relationship. Exactly. You had some communication with the police departments and stuff. When I came to California, Dara Gates, oh my God, they were killing black men wholesale. And at the time, the only thing they had to do was say, well, I thought he was on PCP. You remember those days?
I remember those days. And then when they take you down to the state, then they hose you down to disinfect you. You have to strip down and then they hose you down, and check all your cavities and everything, just a humiliation.
To totally dehumanizing a human being. And I'm sitting up here thinking, tell me, am I wrong here? When people say, well, they need better training, if you need training to not shoot a human being in the back 5 times, that used to be called a coward. There was a name for that. It was called a coward. That's not training. That just, you didn't screen and get the right people on your police department. Right. You got the wrong people as walking around here as policemen, and we're calling them heroes. And I think psychologically, one of the biggest problems with white America is that no one wants to defame or punish their heroes. So if you have programmed in white America that the police department is their heroes, that's one of the psychological problems that is buried deep down, that how do we come back and punish our heroes? Do that make any sense?
Right, that makes absolute sense.
So I want you to, what we're going to do is we have your book.
Okay.
And I wanted to start this off and tie this in because your book is a great journey of a black man finding out about himself and who he or she is. And I think one of the things that is going to help us as black people come up out of this is that we're not going to necessarily change hate. We're not going to change how this old group rednecks opinion about us. But the more we learn about who we are and our roots and who we are inside and not let them identify us, I think that's going to be the greatest path that we can go on. Speak to that with it.
Okay, because I think one of the main things that we have to have connection, and when we realize just who we are and that we all of the same spirit, I am you, you are me, and then if I harm you, I'm harming myself.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have to have that kind of love. And as you said, we have to learn our history. Because if we learn our history, this builds up the self-esteem in our young people, to find out that, most of the things we have, we created it originally, from writing to the mathematics to just everyday items that we use to help ourselves. Because the slaves back then, they wanted to make their job easier, so they created and invented a lot of their inventions. Mm-hmm. So if a young man knows that we created right, it's no reason he can't make it in that writing class. If a young lady understand that we did mathematics, we created this, within calculus or geometry, it's not going to be any problems. And so it builds a self-esteem in our young people if they know our history and the things that we have contributed to the world. One of the things. When I was in Cameroon, I had about 10 sons. I call them my adopted son. They were college students.
Cameroon is in Africa, for those of you that don't know.
And Africa is a continent and not a country. A continent with 54 countries, And so when I was in Cameroon, I looked around, and the young people, I was showing them a DVD of the contributions of African people to the world. It was a DVD done by Dr. Kwaku Percy Lynn, also who happens to write the brag for my book. And I looked around, they were crying, and I said, "Why are you crying?" They said, Daddy, we had no idea that African people contributed anything to the world. We thought it was all white people, especially the French. And I realized then that it's not only over here that our young people don't know their history. It's actually in Africa. You would think they would all know it because it's Africa, but they don't, because they were colonized.
Yeah.
Just as we went through slavery, they were colonized. So they all know British history and French history, but they don't know their own history too. So at that time, I said, well, the best thing I could do is probably build a culture center that could disseminate this knowledge. And then back then in 2007, I didn't have any land or anything, but I had the idea that I wanted to have this cultural center that would have books and DVDs and everything to disseminate this kind of information to them. And then later in 2011 and 12, when I went back the second time to Cameroon, I was given free land.
Wow.
Yeah, I was on that journey with the actress Shirley Lee Ralph and one of the ladies in Sweet Honey and the Rye. They were all on that same trip with me, and we were all given free land. And there's three of us here in L.A. We're going to put our land together. We all descendants from Cameroon, and build this culture center that I thought about back in 2007.
Well, in this culture center, is this going to be taking some of the, maybe getting groups of young African Americans to visit there and vice versa?
Yeah, we hope to have an exchange program because, I've always said I wanted to be a bridge between continental Africans and African Americans, just somehow to be that bridge, and I think through our culture center we'll be able to do this.
I think you're already the bridge. I just got to get people to cross it with you.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. Give us the name of your book. I mean, this is an excellent book. I didn't get to read, but I glimpsed through a little bit of it, and this is it. I don't know whether do we have. Mm-hmm. And this is a wonderful book. And tell us how this book came about.
Okay, it's called Radiant Truths, The Spiritual Journey of an African American of Cameroon Descent DNA Test. And how the book came about is like I've always had this thing for Africa. I don't know why. And so but I just started, so I started traveling in Africa in 1977, went to a big festival called Festac. And since 77, I've been back 13 times. And I've visited over 8 countries. I visited Nigeria, Kenya, Cameroon, Swaziland, South Africa, Egypt, amongst what countries I've covered. And so when I had the DNA test done, the technology came out for the DNA test, and so when I had it done and found out my ethnic groups were from Cameroon, I'm Bubi, Bamileke, Hausa, and Fulani, and so I journeyed back there in 2007 and hooked up with descendants of my ancestors, particularly the Bamileke tribe.
Well, how did that change your life, coming from an African American descendant of slave, without any knowledge, well, limited knowledge on where you came from? How has that strengthened you? Because you're a very powerful man, and I love your energy and your power and your strength.
Yeah, it was like a big piece of the puzzle out of my life that was finally in place. Because now I don't have to just say I'm an African American. I know I'm a Cameroon American. That's the term that we use. And so it's a good feeling, like, I was saying, building up that self-esteem, because I know exactly where my descendants came from. And it was interesting when I back the second time, they actually apologized for slavery. The Cameroonians there
really
actually apologized for slavery. And then on the first trip back in 2007, when I hooked up with the Bamilekes, I hooked up with a chief. And he went on to tell how his great-great-grandfather had sold his own people into slavery for trinkets, for not just trinkets, but for whiskey. A lot of us don't, want sort of deny that part, that the Africans participated in that, but the Africans themselves, sold a lot of.
There were many.
They didn't know what they were selling them into.
That's the key. They didn't know what they were selling them into.
Exactly, because it was part of the culture at the time. Your enemies, you take and you sell them to another.
And even their version of slavery was totally different. This slavery here was a new kind of slavery. This is something that has never happened. And I think it's amazing. I have said this on my show a few times, and very few African Americans have I talked to can actually answer this question, because I say to my friends all the time, if you talk to a Hispanic guy and he finds a new land, he has a flag that he can raise. If you talk to an Asian, Japanese or Chinese, if he found a new land, what flag would he raise? And here it is, you come to an African American, if he find a new land, what flag is he going to raise? And then you can raise a Cameroon flag.
I can raise a Cameroon flag, very proudly.
It does not have to be an American flag, the one that did the oppressing. But that's a very powerful thing, to be connected to a land, and a lot of people don't realize that when you see the shooting and the killings of African American men here in America, they're telling us this is not your land. This is not your home. Now, we don't have to buy into it.
Oh, no.
And we shouldn't. No. But there are those that really feel that this is not our land. So in that sense, we are a people without a land, without a landmass, without a flag. And you being able to connect to that is very powerful. You are, and I think that once again, I'm repeating myself a little bit because of the seriousness of what our young men or women are going through now. We are lost. We still have so much residue of the slave mentality in us, and people know that. And people see it.
Right. And I think with my book, I'm hoping that people will read my book and truly be blessed. And that they will read it with the idea that they will also go out and take such a test to find out their connections. It seems like a hard thing to do, but it's not. It's really easy.
Give us some examples of what's in this treasure chest here. Tell us a little bit about what's in the treasure chest.
Well, it runs the gamut. It's really like I set out to develop my journal, because I journal each day I was in Africa. And I first went to do my humanitarian work. I do humanitarian work with a group that I co-founded called Project Africa Global. And so we went to Swaziland, and we've been to Swaziland about 6 or 7 times, because we don't just move around. We put a Band-Aid on the situation. We like to stay there. And so the first 2 weeks that I was in Swaziland, I journaled that. The group came back here. I went on to Cameroon, and I journaled that whole experience. But at the same time, I had joined spiritual center, and I was learning all about these spiritual things, and it sort of explained my life to me. Because before I thought I just had a miraculous life, a magic life, but I realized that all the principles of the universe was working for me all my life. So my book then became like a memoir. So it's like reading two books in one. You have the actual journal for when I was in Africa and the memoirs of my life. And the memoirs just jump all around. I've been married twice. I talk about my 2 marriages in there. And we mentioned earlier my March in Selma. Also, another interesting thing, when I was a young person, I set this intention to go to Dinah Washington's funeral. I had heard it announced on the radio. And for some reason, I just wanted to be at that funeral. And so I talk about that story in there, how I managed to get to the funeral and not just get there, but I ended up on the stage with other VIPs, and all these people all around me getting up speaking, and I'm just sitting there.
Let me ask you a question then, because you've used the word intentions a couple of times. So something tells me that intentions is very important to your destiny and how you got to this point and where you're going. Tell us what that means to you.
Yeah, I've just learned that, you set your intentions, and then with the law of attraction and all that, working with it, it helps things to materialize. And see, now it used to be happen haphazardly, but now I deliberately set my intentions. I think I was telling you earlier, Dick Gregory, who's one of my heroes, in fact, his picture's in the back of my book with me shaking his hand. He's always been a hero of mine. We went to the same college together, Southern Illinois University. We both Alpha Phi Alphas.
There was some connections there.
Yeah, same fraternity. I read his book, Cooking with Mother Nature, years ago, and so I started fasting. My first fast was a 30-day fast, and we were down in the Selma March together. And so my life has always paralleled his. And about a month or so ago, he got a star on Hollywood Boulevard. Well, I know because of my friendship with Mary Wilson, which is she writes a brag.
Yeah,
for
you
me
got
in
to
my
tell us
book.
about that friendship with Mary Wilson of the Supremes.
And so I know they have a meet and greet when people get a star on Hollywood Boulevard. So I called his secretary, and so I asked her about going to the meet and greet, and she said, "Oh no, there's no way you can go there. Don't you know he has 10 children? And after all, this star ceremony is for meet and greet is for people who've donated $1,000 or more." So the next day, I again set my intentions. I said, I'm going to write a nice email and tell how our lives hit parallel, and I'm going to go to that greet and meet. Sure enough, the following day, she gets back with me. Well, Mr. Gregory read your email, and he wants you to be his guest at the meet and greet.
Oh, wow.
And so that didn't surprise me because I had set my intentions.
Well, but you're such a fascinating person. So I'm skipping a little bit because you said that there was a part of your life at one point thing was happening almost magically.
Yes.
And so tell me about that.
Okay, I give several incidents of these miraculous happenings. And they're very hard to believe, but this happened to me. That's why I journal it in my book. I went to Africa on a trip to Ghana, and I had an organizer, and I lost my organizer in Africa, in Ghana. And I was so upset and distraught about losing this organizer. And I got back here, went back to my classroom. By the way, I'm a retired school teacher. I taught 43 years. And so one of my students, a 5th grade student, I was teaching one day, and he came from the back of the room, and he came up to me, and he had my organizer. He says, "Is this yours, Mr. Shaw?" Now, this organizer looked like it had gone through a time warp. It was all twisted.
Are you kidding me?
But this is how it happened. Now, magic, I don't know how you would explain it, but this actually happened to me. So I know those things can work. Well,
you coming out of Chicago. and your family coming out of New Orleans or Louisiana, then you have a more of a Baptist Christian background. And so how did you, I want to say evolve, I'm going to say the word, graduate to Science of Mind?
Okay.
Am I right in detecting that?
Right, you're right. But because what it is, when I became part of Science of Mind, I didn't even know about it was Science of Mind. I just knew it was spirituality, And what I decided, I had joined Agape International Spiritual Center. And when I joined, I had the intentions of going to my regular church because it was a full gospel Baptist church, and I'd been there 23 out of 24 years, so there's no way I was going to leave my church, the Victory Baptist Church, Full Gospel Baptist Church in Pasadena, and there was no way I was going to leave there. But after I started going to Agape, and I would feel empowered because I was learning just who I was.
But the Science of Mind is bigger than that one group over there.
Right. It's just it's spirituality of learning who we are, and that we are spirit, and there's no separation between me and God. At one time, I thought God was just up in the sky, but I realized that He's within me, and especially through meditation. One of the things I talk about in my book is affirmative prayer and meditation. And I said if I could give a gift to the world, it would be the practice of meditation because it's going in within. See, it's all an inside job where our things that manifest on the outside all starts first with us visualizing, understanding it, and feeling it within us.
Well, when you look at it and understanding that the human being, especially the beauty of the human body, it is actually a map of the universe.
Yes.
And once you look at it from my perspective, a map of the universe. And what I like about the process of Science of Mind, or not Scientology, but Science of Mind, is that it separates you from religion. Then religion becomes very small.
Right.
And once you understand who you are inside, and that's what takes me back to talking about we as young African American, young African American, black people in America, and as black people around the globe, because we have come from a position of being conquered.
Right.
We come from a position where our history have been hidden and we've been separated from it. And we still think that sometimes we got to dig in archaeology to find who we are.
Yeah, because
but who we are is inside.
Exactly, because a lot of religions is divisive, but with Science of Mind is more of inclusion, including everybody, and understanding that we all are one. I am you, you are me. Namaste. The God in me sees the God in you.
And then we go to this love, yes, and this,
which is the most powerful energy in the world. Yeah,
I know someone that can say, Larry, you said love.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's the energy, the agape love. I could say omnipresent, omniscient, but it's also agape.
And and a lot of people, and I have to bring this up because I know some of my listeners, and he does not mean the church.
No.
A lot of people don't know how to separate agape love from the
because it's a Greek word,
Yeah,
and in the Bible it talks about the different kinds of love, and the highest is the agape love, which is the unconditional love. But it's also a love that we have for each other, love that you have for your family. But the highest is that of unconditional love, when you can love. Because if you really love somebody, it would be no way you'd be out harming them or shooting them in the back. If you understand that this is also you.
Exactly. And when you look at some of the, and going back, I think it was brilliant, a wonderful thing you said about religion. And I think I want to shrink religion. Like, I remember one of the Republicans said a few years ago that they wanted to shrink the government so small that they could drown it in a bathtub. I want to shrink religion so small that I can drown it in a spoon of water. Because a lot of the people that's doing all of this damage, going to war, want to bomb this country, want to bomb that country, want to enslave that person, want to cut this person's head off. It's all, not all, but most of it is religion involved. Right. I guarantee you the cop that shot that man in the back was baptized as a Christian. I'd be willing to bet my life on it.
And all the judgment that comes with it.
And all the judgment that come with it. And all the judgment. That's a great point. That's a good point.
Yeah, right. Because that's what. Because like I said, I was intending to go to my regular religious church, but when I went there one Sunday, he got to talking about to the young people. There were a lot of young people in our church, and he said, "I know you were out last night just drinking and partying. You're not, and you had to crawl into your house and go to the bathroom and throw up. You're nothing but a bunch of buttheads." And then he went on with the Adam and Steve thing, and I left the church feeling so down. And then when I went to my spiritual center, I was feeling so up and alive and empowered, like I could take on the world.
Yes.
So I said, you know what? I like this feeling better, so I'm just going to attend my spiritual center.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. And like you said, the pushing of the Adam and Steve, which now you see what they're trying to do with the gay community in California. They want to pass a law to shoot a gay person, or you have cities now that want to pass laws that people from the LGBTQ community, and I remember when I was considered coming out of Mississippi, considered homophobe. I don't say I was, but this is how it was perceived at the time because of my own lack of understanding.
Right.
But then as I
and your
grown,
religious belief,
and the Baptist religious belief, but once you grow into yourself, once you understand and you become getting into the spirit means you're open to people. People are free to be who they are. Now I could never in my life. I could never endorse some of the madness out there. And in fact, I think one of the things that I'm hoping to happen that people from the gay and lesbian community, and because it's a multicultural,
right,
kind of step in and we all pool our resources together. And the African American community and the gay and lesbian community, that's a lot of resources because what they're doing with all this religious crap is keeping us separated.
Right, exactly. And one of the things I talk about in my as a SGL man, meaning same gender loving man, I talk about the bonding that I found in Africa. Where the brothers is not a homosexual thing; it's just a close bonding of brothers. That I experienced there. That you don't experience in this country.
And you're free to it because you're open to it.
Brothers are holding hands. One of the things they are, you're leaving tonight, I must sleep with you. They don't mean the homosexuality. They just want to keep you company. It's about that type of bonding thing.
And we're so afraid of that. We've been programmed so afraid of that.
Right.
But here again, I love this conversation because we're just spreading all over the place.
Yeah.
Now, one of the
that's
things
what my book does is all over the place.
I like the theme of that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that happened to us that is unspoken, you probably hear it for some of my people that watch the show know I've talked about this. But one of the things that once I look back, I ask myself, why am I so anti-gay, or what is the root of it? Because everybody would say, well, you're scared it's going to rub off. No, I'm cool with who I am. I know that. But you know what I found out? We don't realize that when they were selling slaves in America, that if the slave had feminine ways, he was beat until he man up, so to speak, because his price was down if he had feminine ways.
Right.
And he could not, and the other buyers wouldn't buy him if he was gay. So it wasn't that, it was just religion with us. Remember, Christianity was bestowed and forced on us a few years later once you couldn't read and write. But then when I look at the core, not all of it, I'm not excusing it, but some of the core that we haven't talked about is how we was treated if we was gay by the sale and trade, and then the number of rapes that black men went through from gay slave owners.
Yeah, right. That's seldom talked about.
And it's not talked about.
I think I saw one movie that dealt with that.
Yeah, but go right ahead.
And then too, you have to remember our culture coming from Africa. There were warriors, but also there was the ones who took care of the callow and the peaceful ones, and so you had a different kind of African, even in Africa.
Yes, you did.
You had the aggressive warriors, the macho, and then you had the peaceful ones who took care of the herds and things like did the farming and things like that around
and
Africa.
one that would be considered having feminine traits.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you had that, and it wasn't necessary, but it wasn't necessarily, but something that was wrong with the culture. But when they were sold into slavery, that part was beat out of them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then once again, I'm being repetitive, and we forget how many the male rape, the forced bestiality upon black men.
Right.
And we don't want to talk about this. So that's part of, I let some of my listeners know that when you judge African people about the homosexual and what's in their culture, we cannot remove that. And then on top of that, we got the religion.
Yes.
And so we can get past all of this.
Right.
So I think, tell me about some light at the end of the tunnel. Tell me what you see. You're wise, man. Tell me what you see in it.
Well, I think what I see at the end of the tunnel is that our planet is shifting, and even in religions, people are in religion, they're getting more to understand that we are all one people, that we are spirit, having in human form, having a human experience, but who we really are will live, has always been. Can you imagine yourself not ever having been? Because we have always been.
We always have.
And we always will be.
Yes.
And I think that at the light of at the end of the tunnel is us realizing that we are all one people.
And the reason I ask you that, because I got permission from this young man, and his story just is so powerful. And you suffered a stroke.
Yes.
And then when I asked you about it a few minutes ago, I asked him, I said, well, is it okay to bring it up? Because, and he said, I didn't have no pity party.
Yeah, no. I've never. And again, it's because of the understanding and the principles I had learned at my spiritual center, because I know that this body is not me. I live in this body, and it's like living in a house, but it's not, and I control everything in it, but it's not who I am. Who I am have never been hurt, harmed, been in any kind of danger, and so when I had the stroke, I looked at it to say, okay, what challenges am I going to have, and what opportunity can I find out in this health chance to help others. And before I had the stroke, I was very independent. I didn't want anybody to do anything for me. But now I'm at the point where I welcome people to help me when I need help. And then, too, even if I can do it myself, I'll still allow you to do it, because I don't want to block your blessing. I still want you to be able to be blessed for helping me.
That is very powerful.
Right, yeah. And so you'll never hear me say my stroke. It's only the stroke, because I know that I'm going to overcome this health challenge also in my life.
How long ago was it?
The stroke occurred in 2010, and in 2010 I was just about through writing the book, and I had gone to Ghana, and 2 weeks after I came back from Ghana, in fact, I met Agape Spiritual Center over there. I had gone to see Brother Tate.
I know Brother Tate very well.
Brother
yes.
Tate's church, and I had a stroke 2 weeks after I got back, and at that time I was in best of shape. I was going to the gym 4 days a week. I was boxing 2 days a week, hiking, doing everything, because I had retired in 2004. So I was just enjoying life. I was substitute teaching. I had gone back to substitute teaching, but I was basically really enjoying life when this occurred. And so since then, when I finished the book, I started back on the book last year, I wrote an epilogue of all the things that occurred with me from 2010 to 2004. So
the guy, and you included this stroke and the stroke.
Right.
I like the way you stated that, and you are the perfect guest for me today and the times where we're looking at where there are so many out there that's feeling like there's no hope, and then there are so many that is finding ways to not push forward to fight for tomorrow, and then with your challenges and for you to say this. The essence of you have never been in danger.
Exactly.
The essence of you have not been injured.
Exactly.
But that body that housed you has its challenges.
Exactly.
Did I hear that correctly?
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
And that is such a powerful statement, and that's why. And adding to what you just said as far as about the future, I want to bite my car tire and chew a few pencils and stuff because of what I see what's happening. But I can't honestly see. I looked up and I see all of these young people on these college campuses that are fighting for gay rights, all across all the color lines, fighting for human rights across color lines. I see all of these young people when we get to see the evening news where there's young Asian kids, white kids, black kids holding up signs saying Black Lives Matters and this, that is the hope. That is the hope right there. And I think we should be the water to water the knowledge that we have and the experience we have on those new seeds out there and watch it grow and bear the fruit of the future, which is hope and love and compassion for one another, and knowing that we all have been here, is here, and always will be.
Exactly. Yeah. And you had mentioned earlier about my friendship with Mary Wilson.
Yeah, tell me a little bit
that's
about that.
a real special. We had first met when I was about 18 years old. She came down to the University of Southern Illinois, and my fraternity, Alphas, of course, had chosen me to. We picked straws, actually. I won. And present the Supremes with our fraternity flower, which is the yellow rose.
Oh.
And so I was back of the stage, and I presented with the flowers there. And so to fast forward, then I saw Mary, when I was here in the airport, and then I went on a cruise in the 90s. Oh, well, first of all, I moved out here to Los Angeles. But so 10 years later, after college, after I first met her, I ran to at a party that was given for Diana Ross. And so she said, "Don't I know you?" And I said, "I don't think so." And then I remember I had presented these flowers, and I didn't think she would remember that. And she said, "Oh, yes, I remember the auditorium back at the gymnasium and everything." And so she remembered it in detail. And so then going to the 90s, I was on a cruise, and she was performing on the cruise.
Wow.
And so
so you guys reconnected, huh?
Exactly. She had some downtown time. She said, "Hey, let's hang out." And we got to talk about books and things, the books that we had read, and we had so much in common. She always wanted to be a teacher, and I always wanted to be an entertainer. So we both lived vicariously through each other,
Only for the sake of time, because we're running out of time here. I'm so enjoying it. You got to do this with me again.
Okay.
You got to promise you're going to do this with me again.
No problem.
And so, but Mary Wilson of the Supreme played a part. I'll work with you in this book, right?
Yeah. I write a whole chapter about our friendship.
Now, let me tell you why we're connected
and she
again.
She did the brag on the cover of my book.
Let me tell you why you and I are connected again.
Okay.
We're finding out how we've been crossing. We know some of the same people here. I worked with Lamont Dozier for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And Lamont Dozier wrote all those songs for
Supreme
Diana
song.
Ross and the Supreme.
Exactly.
And I was with him and helped him reproduce his album, distribute his album and stuff. Then I ended up working with Smokey Robinson.
Wow.
So that whole Motown thing there,
6 degrees of separation. Yeah. And then we talked about our friend Swamp Dogg earlier.
Yeah, we were talking about our friend Swamp Dogg. You make sure that guy call me. I got to get his number. But I think I just appreciate you so much because knowing your journey, a little bit about your journey, and you're sharing your journey with us and my audience and those of you that are listening. I know you're going to enjoy this. And then when you got to the part where your challenge, I noticed that you lit up. You moved forward. You didn't bounce back, and you didn't drop your head. Your eyes didn't move, shift. There was a light in you when you talked about the journey of the stroke.
Right.
And that just tells me that we can learn so much if we look at this challenge that we have today and see it. I mean, let's look at the problem that we're calling today and see it as a challenge that it is, but new possibilities.
Exactly.
And new opportunities. We're going to be shutting off in a quick second. So give us a words of wisdom. Give us the name of your book real quick.
Again, it's Radiant Truth, The Spiritual Journey of an African American of Cameroon Descent DNA Test. And I do have my social media information. I'm on www.radianttruths.com. www.radianttruth.com. And then on my Facebook it's Radiant Truths. And then my Twitter is Karimu Shaw at Corey4540. And that's Karimu, Karimu SHAW at KORY4540. So you can find me there.
And then you'll catch this show on YouTube, and you'll be able to get that up. Give us a words of wisdom of goodbye.
Okay, well, I just first of all, I would like to thank you for having me on the show. And the words of wisdom I would like to leave with everybody is just, hey, just always just do the right thing. And as Spike Lee said from his movie, do the right thing. And then things will manifest and happen in your life. That's from the brother Karimu. I got it, huh? Yep, you got it. Anyway, this is Larry Yates. I just want to thank you. You are an example of human beings looking at the obstacles ahead in front of them and seeing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel that is a bright light of a love and spirit. Remember, this is Larry Yates' show. A nation can rise no higher than it elevates its woman. Peace. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next week.
In the future, talk radio